Hello and welcome to playthrough of City of the Big Shoulders. Okay, I know it's been a while. I've even had a few people check in with me and say, Jeff, what's going on? Where you at? I took a break for the holidays, and to be quite honest, I had such a good time, I never came back. But I got my hands on this game. I actually don't own it, so I only have it temporarily. And my situation is so bad, I don't even have like my camera tripod, so I'm holding it in my hand. Sorry for the wobbliness. But I really wanted to get this game to the table. It's an 18xx game and Arkwright mixed together. We've done some 18xx games on this channel. We never did Arkwright. I used to own Arkwright. I actually don't like Arkwright all that much. It was too mathy for me, but this one is blending the two together. I'm very curious to see how this plays. I have issues with 18xx games, but I still like playing them. I'm definitely not like, Dice Tower or some of those guys who hate them. I thought this game was very funny. I've been looking on YouTube and, like, for example, one of those rules guys did a review of this, and he really didn't have good things to say about the rules of this game. And what's interesting is I know I get rules wrong all the time, but this rule book makes total sense to me. But the reason it makes total sense to me is because I've played 18xx games before. So this reminds me a lot like Danverson Games. If you bought their, for example, their Corsair Leader game, they make all kinds of assumptions. And because I played Hornet Leader, I know how to play Corsair Leader because when they say, do this or do that, I know exactly what they're asking me to do. But it's really funny because when people bought that game fresh and it was their very first Leader game, they're like, what the heck does this mean? And I think that same reaction is happening to this game. But if you've played an 18xx game before, it's not so bad. Now, I'm not done with the rulebook yet. I'm just going to do setup. And if you're looking for the playthrough, go to video 2. We're going to go ahead and dive in to the setup and talk about the different components and what I do know. And I know that the Heavy Cardboard has a 4-hour playthrough, which is atrociously long. But I think, by the time I'm done, it'll probably be just as long as well. But hopefully we can get through it and we can talk about, I promise you, I will give you all my reactions. And so here's the deal. I've never played this yet. And we're going to just play it together. I'm going to have to play all sides, schizophrenic style. I don't enjoy that. But I did it for 18OE, and I'll do it again for this. For whatever reason, 18xx games, I can sort of get away with it. And what we're going to do is we're going to create like a little AI logic. So maybe, one person's going to just want to invest in really rich companies. And I like to do this because 18xx games are really challenging to figure out what is the best optimal strategy. So for example, with 18OE, I had a strategy where, hey, what if I went all Russia? And it actually works. And if you watched my playthrough, that all Russia strategy is solid. And it doesn't seem at first like it would work, but it does. And that's the kind of things that surprise me with these games and these 18x games. They really deserve more credit than they get. Now, with that said, I'm going to try that with this. So we're going to maybe, come up with some different AIs, and or maybe I can talk one of my sons into playing with me, and then I can avoid the schizophrenic style. But so we're going to do that. I'm probably going to do 4 players, and then we'll have a hoedown. I know every game, every video I watched of this so far, they talk about, well, there's 5 decades, and then there's these different phases per decade. We'll get into that. I was thinking we're just going to cover those as we go. The biggest thing is for setup. This is what you need to do. We have the various companies. I have them all over there. We'll go over that in a second. Actually, let's go over that now. So I'm going to just grab one company real quick, and they're all very different. So please, please, please understand that as I show this to you. And so what you got going on here is you have a company that makes shoes. Okay, so the the basic gist of this game is any 18xx game is you win the game by having the most personal money. You're going to start the game with $175. With that $175, you're going to be able to start a company. And when you start a company, you're going to be able to buy shares. And the shares in this game, let's grab the right one here. So for CM Henderson, every company has 10 shares, and you're going to see that they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shares that are 10% each. And then there's going to be a director's stock, which is 30%, and a preferred stock, which is 20%. Okay, you're going to hear me say president share over and over and over again because it's just a bad habit from other games. President share and director's stock share, same thing, interchangeable. The official rules, of course, for this game is director's stock. My apologies. I'm going to say president share over again, and please, just forgive me for that. Okay, so now there's a twist. If you've never played 18xx games before, so you can start a company and you would use the director's stock. So that means you have to buy 3 shares of the company. So this is one certificate. So terminology-wise, this is one certificate, but it's worth 3 shares, 3 of these, right? So the director's stock will get this certificate, and that'll be your personal. This is part of your personal money, right? So you use personal money to buy it, and then when you buy the company, that personal money you spent goes into the company. So the company has its own treasury. You have your own treasury. At the end of the game, you win by having the most money in your treasury. The amount of money that's in the company is worth jack diddly, okay? So that's extremely important to understand. Now, how much does this company cost? I mean, you might be looking, okay, there's no price on it. Well, we have a little stock board over here, and these little shaded areas are the possible costs. So you can choose to spend $35 a share or $60 a share, and it's your choice. Now, why would you do one over the other? That's the age-old strategy that will be the debate of any 18xx player until the end of time. And really, the answer is it depends. And so it's your choice. We'll talk about the depends part when we actually start the company. And in fact, some of the AIs of these 4 players we're going to do is I'm going to have one AI probably go cheap at the $35 shares, and another AI go with the $60 share. And in fact, I don't think we could do 60 because 175, won't work. Okay, so with that being said, what is next with this? So you get this company, and it's got all these symbology things on it. It's just like a charter with any 18xx game. I forgot to mention, why is this one say 30%? This one says 20, and then there's these that have 10. Obviously, you get to purchase them. When you own the company, you get to keep this one. The owner of this company can never buy this. You can never have both of these at the same time. You're either the director or you have this. You can't be the director and this, okay? The advanced rules of this game allows you to steal companies from other players, and any respectable 18xxer should play that way. And I know some of you Euro guys who are dabbling into this for the first time, you may say, okay, well, that's advanced rules. Let's not do that. I think that you're making a big mistake. The ability to steal companies from other players is a grand old fun. You need that in the game, or otherwise there's all kinds of exploits you get to do. You have to make sure you control your company. Otherwise, you can really just run your company into the ground. The other thing is you can purposely run your company in the ground, and if somebody else buys your shares, you can actually ditch the company and give it to someone else, and that's also grand old fun, okay? That's the beauty of 18xx, and if you don't play with the advanced rules, you're missing out on all of that. I highly recommend it. I know it says advanced rules. I understand why. I just think, you're big boys and girls out there, you can do it. So that's the first thing. Second thing, I think it's Paul Grogan or whatever that did the big rant. I think some of the things he found are, fair. I think that he's never really played an 18xx before, and so some of the things he was frustrated about aren't a big deal. But the one thing that he did mention with the colors, you can see that this is a little darker than that one. I mean, when you see them side by side, it makes a difference, but I actually don't find it to be quite as bad as he claimed, but I do see it. So that's one thing. He was also talking about how, you know, you have these different colored cubes. I sort of see that. And then there was a few other ones. Oh, he was talking about this little down arrow meaning nothing. Actually, I'm really happy he found that. And I'm quite disappointed in how they played this out, because this to me would have meant that the shares dropped, but I'm going off on a tangent there, comparing my notes to his video, which I found helpful. And if he ever watches this, my message to him is I actually value the fact that he had a negative review. I think he did a great job. I'm just saying, you know, for those of us who've played 18xx games, it's not quite as bad as he claims, but maybe when you're coming in and you've never played an 18xx game before, I think his observations are legitimate and really should be taken seriously for any other developer who wants to create a game that tries to bridge the two. Okay, so let's get back to the setup. With your company here, you have what's called factories. So each of these squares is a factory, okay? If I have a black cube and a pink cube as resources that are input into my factory, and I hire one worker, so I have to have all three of those things, I will produce 3 goods. Now the game will also have this at the start, okay? That's a automation that doesn't exist yet. So if I was ever able to automate this worker, I would move this out, replace the worker, and then this worker would move to the right. And if there's nowhere to move to, he gets fired and he goes back into the unemployment pool. So now that this is automated, as long as I still get these 2 resources as input, I will now make 4 goods instead of 3. Now remember, I'm making shoes, so those shoes would get sold on the market, and this is the demand on the market. So 1, 2, 3, 4 of my goods would be sold, and I would basically fill up this card and most of that card. Okay, now there's all kinds of stuff, like this column has a $50 thing at the top there. So if I'm the one that sells the last digit on here, I actually get an extra $50 in revenue. So great. Now, how much am I selling them for? Well, each company is different. So you can see here that I would sell my goods my shoes sell for 20 bucks. And if I have one of those office managers here, and it's actually not called an office, salesman, right here, salesman. So if I have a salesman, I would sell it for, each good would sell for $30, and if I have 2 salesmen, I would make $40. Okay? Now, if I have see the lighter brown, that's called a manager. So if I have a manager over the factory, then I would produce one of those cubes, and I would produce what's called an appeal. Appeal is something from Arkwright, where you can see there, it goes from 0 and, comes down. Appeal in this game is which company gets to go first. Now, it's really interesting because in most 18xx games, the company that goes first is the one that has the highest stock value. But in this game, it's appeal. And this company starts with 1 appeal, and then when you hire these various managers, you can get appeal. Now, what this does is when that factory produces, you make this number of goods down below, and as long as there's a manager in the factory, you would also produce an appeal. So that appeal would go up by 1 every time that factory produces. And if you have both of these factories, you would actually get your appeal to go up twice. So it's that kind of concept, right? So that's the gist of the game. And then this game has worker placement. I mean, it's just like, it's got everything. It's got Arkwright appeal mechanics. It's got Arkwright's demand mechanics. Because yes, as you may have guessed, if all of these sell out and you go last and you also produce shoes, you're not going to be able to sell any of it. And so your company will make $0. So that's a lot of sadness in one game. Then there's this worker placement mechanic. So you have different actions on the board, and then players are going to actually have these action tokens, and we're going to get to place actions on the board, and that's going to create even more actions that are available for us to do. It's really interesting, and that's why I'm very excited to try this game. I want to see how they all blend together. I mean, no one's really tried to bridge 18xx like this before, and based on what I've heard on videos, there's a varying mix of whether people like it or don't. And in my observation so far is that the 18xx people sort of like it or do like it, and those who come from the Euro perspective, the worker placement background, don't. And it's interesting, and I sometimes think that it might just simply be because they got frustrated with the rules, and had they had somebody explain it to them, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. I don't know. I think, again, I think the name was Paul Grogan. He made the comment about how since trains aren't resting in this game, there's not a lot of reason to withhold. Some of the people in the comments of that video made very good observations. There's lots of reasons you withhold. But see, those of us who play 18xx games understand that. And, but his explanation still was valid. The number one reason people withhold is to buy those trains before they rust. And he's right. Without that, you may not have that pressure, but there's still reasons you want to withhold, but that's getting into game strategy. So back to setup. So like they said, 5 rounds in the game, you start up there, you put your marker here. None of this stuff should be on the board. This was all just me trying to learn the game. These tokens here all have an S on them. These are called capital assets, so see that little S at the bottom? This brilliant marketing is always in the $80 space. These are randomly shuffled, okay? So you shuffle them up, you put them however you like. This here, these are 5 objectives that are random. So there's a whole bunch of them available. These are objectives for the end game, and they change every game. So I'm very interested in seeing how that plays into this as well. And that might, of course, dictate how you play your game, right? You may want to go for certain objectives. This demand market, a couple of things. These little number 3 at the bottom is, as you may have guessed, is based on number of players. If you're playing in a 4-player game, you use all of them. If you're only playing a 3-player game, then you would keep everything up to 3, and then of course get rid of the 4 that you see there, right? So that would be out. If you're playing a 2-player game, you would get rid of all the 3s and the 4s. So pretty straightforward there. The other thing is, you're going to notice on the other side that this has like 1 pip on the bottom. Now notice over here that that one has 3 pips. So you sort these by the pips, and then you shuffle each group. So the 4 pips get shuffled, and then they go to the bottom. And then the 3 pips get shuffled, and they go on top of that. And then the 2 pips are on the board here, and so are the 1 pips. So it's just one big stack, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you can see all the 1s and 2s are already on the board. Okay? So straightforward stuff, not a lot of rocket science there. But if you're ready to set up your game, that's obviously an important step. And so the order you do it matters, because you start with the single pips first. You go down the right side, then down the middle, then down the left. It's very important because you want the 1 pips to be divided amongst the 4 goods. You don't want to go this way, right? Because then all the 2 pips are going to end up on these 2 goods down here. Okay. The rest of these, of course, are shuffled. I forgot to mention that. Everybody starts with $175. We're going to shuffle the goal cards. As you can see, we draw 5. Separate the buildings according to their era. The buildings, of course, are these little worker placement spots. And you can see there's 3 pips, 2 pips, 1 pip. And we would obviously start the game with the 1 pips. And so you can see here that shuffle each deck. And then in 2-player games, you're going to remove some of the buildings that have 3 and 4 written on them. So let's see if we can find some of those. Right there. So you can see the 3, that would get removed in a 2-player game. And somewhere in here is a 4 that would get removed in a 3-player game. So we're going to try to do a 2-player because I want to see them all and see how that works. I do want to mention we have the deluxe, the expansion pack, and that will be in the game as well. And let's keep going. Set aside 2 resources of each type, and they go into the Haymarket Square. Then place all remaining resources in the bag. All right, so what that's just saying is Haymarket Square is here. So you take 2 pigs, 2 steel, 2, I can't remember, and 2 coal, I think. So steel, lumber, and then coal. Okay, so 2 lumber, 2 coal. Okay, so those go into Haymarket Square. Give the bag a good shake, then draw 3 resources from the bag and place them onto each resource space near the top of the game board, including the space with an X. Okay, so they give you a bag. I will have to do this later because I'm holding the camera with one hand, but I would put all the resources in here, and then we shake it up, and then we take 3 of each and go bing, 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 all right along the board there. Place 4 workers on the worker spaces on the job market track. So these 4 workers, 1, they would go like that on the darkened spaces. And then place the workers, managers, and other supplies near the board. Place the money from the bank near the board. Deal 3 buildings from era 1 to each player. I'll do that later. Give $175 to each player. Their player aid, place 1 partner into the, okay, yes, so the partner is this thing. So if you fill up all your factories, it doesn't have to be automated, just with employees, you get this partner, and a partner is just a worker placement, worker kind of thing. So he would sit there and you unlock him when you fully automate your factory, okay? So not fully automate, I apologize, fully employ your factory. So you run all 3 factories. That's the key thing I'm looking for. You have to run all 3 factories, then you unlock your worker, okay? I think you start the game with a worker. I have to check that. I think you really need to at least have 1 worker at the start of the game, otherwise you wouldn't be able to do any action. So I'm pretty sure you get at least 1. I just don't know where it's written, but I'll find that. And then each player takes a stock bump guide and choose your starting companies, which I will go over in the next game. So setup is pretty straightforward. I know I spent 17 minutes before I even explained how setup works. Sorry, I'm always long-winded. People point that out a lot. How does the game structure go from here? Well, there's a couple things. First, there's going to be a stock round, just like an 18xx game where you buy and sell shares. Now, in the basic game, you can't steal companies from other people. So that's an important thing. There's a 60% limit on how many shares you can have of your own company or any company. That's basically it. And it's classic 18xx rules, nothing fancy. Like, for example, if you sell a share, you can't later buy a share from that same company in the same decade or round, those are going to be interchangeable words. Then after that, we're going to do the building thing. So this is the non-18xx stuff. We're going to put buildings out. It's going to be, in this little lightning bolt means that all the players do it simultaneously, okay? So we're going to so like if I'm the blue player here, I would put my building out face down, okay? I'm going to have 3 of them. So there are going to be 3 in my hand. I'm going to pick 1 to put face down. I'm going to keep 1, and then 1 I'm just going to discard from the game. So it's a pretty interesting mechanic. Not anything I haven't seen before, but like I said, I'm very curious how it plays into this. Now, once everybody places it, then you would reveal it, and then this would be now an action that I could use a worker on, okay? And it's very interesting, and I apologize if I get some of this wrong, but so when I do that action, it's basically saying I get to do this, but for $30 cheaper, okay? And this, by the way, is you buy one of these tiles down here. And this tile, for example, is $40, so if I'm buying it $30 cheaper, I don't have to pay $10 for this. Now, it also says that, and this is the part I have to look up in the rules, 2 employees are going to do something. I either get 2 employees in my company, or they're going into the unemployment pool. I don't know. I'd have to look it up real quick. But what I'm trying to say is you get the whatever's on the bottom right corner. That's a benefit you get. So I'm assuming that you would get those into your company. You would hire 2 employees if you did that action. But please don't hold me to it. Like I said, I'm still reading the rule book, but that tends to be the nomenclature. Now, like for example, when you buy this, you get an automation. Like you get to automate one of your employees in your factory. And then you're going to see this little symbology up here. So what this says is if you're going to pay, when your company owns this, and so this is like a private in 18xx. So your company can own another company, and that's sort of what this is symbolized. It's called a capital asset. So in order to use your capital asset, your company would pay this $10 up here, and you would get those 2 pink cubes, which you can then use for manufacturing, right? This is a one-time bonus, that automation, when you buy the tile. And this particular company, by the way, has no room for capital assets. So this company I'm showing you can never buy these tiles. That's what's really cool about this game. And then you have other companies, like for example, this one here, see the little, he can have 1, and there's one in this game, the American Flyer, who can actually have 2 of them. So these little capital assets here are you can only ever have 1. Now, the rules do say you can buy more than 1, or like this company could buy 1. It's just that all you're going to get is the automation, but you're not going to get to keep the tile. Like the tile gets discarded. That's an interesting rule as well. Okay, so back to the symbols here. These symbols at the top are just simply saying that for $10, you get to do this. And then where does the $10 go is really what it's answering. So here it's saying you're going to pay the $10 to the bank. That's what the little pillars mean. And then here, you're going to pay the $40 to the player. So if you do this action, that $40 goes to the blue player. Again, another interesting mechanic. I really want to see how that plays out. It seems awesome. So if you put an action out that other players really want, they can by all means do it, but then they're paying you all the time. Really cool. I like that. Whoever designed this has definitely played some good Euros, and yeah, I'm excited about it. So we do that. This phase here is in player order. Player order, by the way, is whoever went last in the stock market. It's the next player to the left, just like any 18xx game. In player order, you put your workers out. That's what this phase is. And then this phase is operating your companies, and you do it in order of highest appeal first. So the highest appeal companies get to sell their goods first, and then you do cleanup. And then we start it, mix and rinse and repeat. Okay, that's a 28-minute video just to talk about setup. I know some people don't like that, but hopefully we covered a lot. I know I went real quick through some of the rules and explaining how some things work. We'll probably go through that in more detail once we actually start playing. But I still got some rules to read, folks. I'm only about halfway. So far, so good. I'm concerned I may forget a few of the rules, but that's classic me. Thank you for joining me at the table as always. I apologize, I don't have my green screen set up, which is really cool, but that requires a lot of effort and a computer, and I just don't have any of that. And like I said, I don't own this game, so I only have it for a limited amount of time. So I really want to get these videos out before, before I have to give the game back. And I would love to buy my own copy, but this is a really difficult game to get. So if you're thinking of getting in, good luck. So anyways, as always, thanks for watching and stay awesome.